Hi, this is Laura Malone, and we're going to work on comparing distributions in this video for AP Statistics. Okay, let's get started. First, we have these two bar graphs that show the temperatures of cities during January. And this one's for Portland, and this one's for Minneapolis. So what we're going to do is we're going to cuss and BS. What? Yes, you heard me correctly. So the C stands for center, the center of the graph where the peak is, where the high point of the graph is, around where the median / mean is, not exactly, but approximately where it's going to be higher in the graph. Then we have the unusual features, such as, there's supposed to be an S, such as gaps or outliers. And then we have the shape, is it skewed, is it symmetrical? And then we have the spread, the range, the variability. And be specific. So when we write this, we're going to be using context, describing which graph we're talking about. And since it is comparing distributions, we're also going to be using words that compare, like higher, lower than, greater than, stuff like that. Okay, so let's start with center. For Portland, it looks like the center is right here. That's where the most is, the peak is around this section right here. And we're kind of going to have to approximate where it is because it's not like exactly one point. We're not going to like go and do math about this. We just have to look at the graph and approximate where it is. So I think it's about 6 degrees Celsius for Portland. And the center for Minneapolis, it's kind of hard to tell because it is skewed out and everything, but I would say it is around between -5 and -2 maybe, so maybe -3 degrees Celsius, and I'm just going to say approximately and say that number. Okay, so the center, this is what we have for center. The distribution of temperatures in January for Portland has a higher center at approximately -6 degrees Celsius than the center for the distribution of temperatures in Minneapolis, approximately -3 degrees Celsius. So I always start off with center. I try to go in the order. Here I use context, where I said the distribution of temperatures in January for Portland, and then I said distribution of temperatures in Minneapolis. That is using context. We can't just say the graph. That's very important to say context. And then I also used comparing words like higher. And I was specific because I used actual data from the graph when I said -6 degrees Celsius and -3 degrees Celsius. Okay, next we're going to look for unusual features, which is basically gaps or outliers. I don't see any gaps or any outliers. So an outlier, we would probably have to do an outlier test for, but for a gap, we could maybe like say if there was something here, we would say there's a gap here and this would be the outlier, but we don't have to worry about that because there's no gaps or outliers for these two distributions. But I'd rather be safe than sorry, so I'm going to say neither of the distributions of temperatures for Portland and Minneapolis have unusual features. I use neither, which is I'm comparing the two graphs by using this word instead of this distribution does this and this distribution does this. If I say neither, then I'm really making sure I get that point for comparing the two graphs. And then I also included context when I talked about the temperatures. Okay. Next we have shape. We're going to look at the shape of both of these distributions. For Portland, I think, to me, it looks like it is skewed to the right, to the higher temperatures. It can be argued that it's roughly symmetrical, but I feel like it's more skewed than it is symmetrical, because if this was the line of symmetry, it's missing some data over here to make it like truly symmetrical, I feel. So I'm going to say this is slightly skewed to the right, to the higher temperatures. In Minneapolis, this is more obvious to tell that it's skewed to the left to the lower temperatures. So this is for shape, and here's what I said. The distribution of temperatures for Portland is slightly skewed to the right towards the higher temperatures. In contrast, kind of extra, but I get the point. The distribution of temperatures for Minneapolis is skewed to the left towards the lower temperatures. I did use context. I used comparing words, higher. Oh wait, that's not it, but in contrast. And yeah, okay. Next, the last one we have is spread. And spread is basically the range, the variability of each distribution. In Portland, it is much smaller distribution than in Minneapolis. So I said, the range of temperatures for Portland is much smaller, 1 degree Celsius to 13 degrees Celsius, than the range of temperatures for Minneapolis, negative 20 degrees Celsius to 7 degrees Celsius. So I said the range, you can say the spread, or anything that can work there. The spread of the distribution would work too. I used context because I included temperatures for Portland and temperatures for Minneapolis. And I was specific because I specifically said the range. I didn't just say it was smaller. I specifically gave data from each of the graphs saying it was 1 degree Celsius to 13 degrees Celsius, and data for the other graph saying it was negative 20 degrees Celsius to 7 degrees Celsius. Yep, and that is it for comparing the distributions of these graphs. Thank you for watching.